Good morning, everyone. This is Luda Kopkina with GAI Insights, where we rate AI daily news essential, important, and optional. Happy Friday, everyone. I have John Sverkla, Paul Baya, Ankaj today from our regular team, and we have a special guest, Vinay Gizwani, who is a Chief Product Officer at One Digital. Vinay, welcome. This is really cool that you can join us.
Thank you, Luda. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Okay, we have several interesting articles today. Ankaj, please start us off with the first one. And and for the people who are listening, the articles are in on our website gaiinsight.com/articles, so you can follow along. Okay, Ankaj, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Quinn, and it talks about their QWQ 32 billion parameter model.
Yeah, I'll introduce. Please chime in. So this is an experimentation. The way the article is positioning, it's how Quen team from Alibaba is experimenting with reinforcement learning to see whether they can get the model to perform well. And as you can see from the graph, thanks Ankaj, they did it. It is open weight, open model that people can experiment with. It's 32B, so it's a smaller model, but I think the news are optional. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I thought it was optional as well. I think it's interesting. They continue to push hard on the smaller models, and these are open weights, as you said. And it's a big battle in the mid tier and the lower tier in terms of performance. The Chinese obviously are doing a lot, but optional.
Vinay, agree with optional?
Yes, it's quite technical, so it depends on your proficiency in models that you'll be able to follow along.
But if I understand this, Luda, though, this is another open source model that is as good, and these benchmarks are slightly better than the DeepSeek. So we had the DeepSeek shock the world moment in December. Now we've got I can do is just as good as you mid-size model here. So we're seeing the rapid proliferation of advancement on multiple open source models, and this being one example of it.
Correct. And what the main thing from our R1 introduction was that reinforcement learning can actually up the performance and drop the cost dramatically. And so now there's a massive experimentation, as you, Paul, is saying, across the various sizes of models and the like, and this is one of them.
Right. And I think this wave is just going to continue to be a tsunami of changes as one open source team looks at the code of the others. It continues to innovate here. So the open source train wreck going into the goodness of closed models is continuing here, and this is another data point.
Right, and remember, they are now using the distillation technique quite freely, right? This is not just R1; it is R1 distilled from stuff or added R1 with added things, right? And distilled from. So it's a very certainly will proliferate across.
So John, it's distillation all the way down with the turtles? Is that what we're getting?
Well, I think that what might be helpful is this guy that I knew very well, Gordon Bell, who was actually worked with Al Gore to commercialize the internet, among other things. Anyway, Gordon was a deep engineer, did the VAX mini computer, for example.
Okay.
And he had a thing where he called Bell's Law. So you have Moore's Law coming down, and Bell's Law was the birthing of different devices every 5 to 7 years. Mini computer, microcomputer, and so forth, down in modes. And I think we're seeing a similar thing here. You're seeing it cascading down of certain capabilities of this one, for example, was 700, whatever, I think it was, anyway, multiple 100 billion parameter down to tens of billions. And you're seeing the cascading down the capability, and it'll go from there down to the phone size models, right? The 7 billion or so. I think we'll see that, and I think we'll continue to see that kind of lumpy, jump down in price and energy while keeping the performance the same or better.
Yeah. Certainly true. Okay, so optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one. Ankash, please.
So the next one comes from A16Z, and it talks about the top 100 Gen AI consumer apps.
An interesting article with lots of backup tables with many startups. What did you think about this one, Vinay?
Well, the first thing that came to mind was that I felt like a little bit like a kid in the candy store. This was awesome, just to see all these little companies doing interesting things. I felt like I wanted a few more hours to look at each company and play around with their products. So it's very clear, obviously, that there is an explosion of new products and new entrepreneurs. Some of them are just folks in their basement kind of working away. Some of them are venture backed and are growing quickly. But it's great to see such a huge list of these companies. And I'm sure that they only scratch the surface of all the companies, all the new companies out there that are doing things in generative AI. The other thing that sort of struck me is that we have to start to think about large language models and generative AI like a new operating system. And this is a great example of what that means. If you think back to when iOS came out and the increase in adoption of mobile phones and apps in the App Store, like all of a sudden you could just sort of go into the App Store and see all these amazing things. I think we all remember that feeling of like discovery and excitement and finding new apps and finding new things that you could do. And I think that that's exactly what's going on right now when there are many different applications that perhaps we never thought were possible or were too difficult to build or required a lot of engineering horsepower to develop. But now all of a sudden, two people working together in their basement, so to speak, are able to put together a pretty remarkable application.
So what is your rating?
Sorry,
What is your rating?
This is definitely a must read because I think that there's, if you're on the business side of anything to do with large language models, this is really insightful to see how companies are monetizing the work that they're doing and see what sectors are doing better than others.
So important, optional, essential, what's your thought?
I would say important.
Okay, John, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was between important and essential. I'm really curious as to where they get the data because I didn't find that, but it must be in there somewhere. But yeah, I think it's important for our AI leader to understand what's happening, both mobile and web-based. And I was surprised by some of the things in terms of how perplexity is very high in the at the desktop, very low, number 50 on the mobile. I thought also interesting that they carved out some of the photo apps that added AI. But yeah, I think it's important for our AI leader to understand what the trends are. I wish that they had the actual frequency numbers because I think these are hugely skewed markets. So the difference between 1 and 2 may be more than the difference between 2 and 47. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it'd be nice to know the shape of the market, not just the logos. But nice piece of work.
Yeah, Paul, important.
I actually had it as essential. I thought 3 or 4 of these graphs were absolutely excellent. And I think if you're a AI leader in a company that's all B2C related, you need ways to continue to educate your management team on the tsunami of changes going on here. So I thought there were like 5 or 6, the mobile usage, the fact that there's 100 of these ones coming up in here. I think there's not enough discussion in my view, there's not enough discussion of B2B AI versus B2C. And I think B2C is going to take off for a bunch of reasons much faster. And this is a great example of it. So I had it rated as essential.
Yeah, I was there too, Paul, because there are several graphs here that talk about the revenue side also from these apps and revenue versus usage, right? Which is a very useful angle, and also how the subscription to ChatGPT flattened, right, and then kicked off back again, right, and what happened with the introduction of DeepSeek and the like. So there's very useful pieces of information here that I think, essential for me.
All right.
Okay, then John, Vinay's essential. Are you okay with that? Okay. All right. Essential it is. Let's proceed with the next one, Ankash, please.
Next one comes from Google, and it talks about expanding AI overviews and introducing AI mode.
Yeah. John, what did you think about this Google introduction?
Yeah, I was going to come in on essential in this one. We've got our, global search leader in the West here, who is now who's basically going from the question economy to the answer economy, right? That this is, when you have, it's now actually giving you answers, is Boston Common, what's the best time to go to Boston Common? It launches a set of searches like, many of the answer engines do, comes back into an integrated way. They obviously have the flow. I'll be curious to see how it fits in terms of how they charge advertisers. When, if I appear in an answer, am I paying for that? How do I do that? So a lot of I'm very curious as to, a lot of the detail. It says AI mode is rooted in our core quality and ranking system. Okay, that's cool. But, then how do I, how do I get position in there? It wasn't that clear to me. Was the algorithm for what I pay for buying.
Yeah, this is not available though, right? Yet AI mode is just for the lab, for the experimentation, correct?
Absolutely. But I think it's, I just think, I thought it was essential reading because people have to understand where Google's going to go in this, because Google's the one I think the most in flux. And the other thing is, it's of all the things that we're reviewing in this domain, Google is the one that is the most embedded in people's current business process and getting paid for. So, I mean, for me, Microsoft and Google and AWS are in a different category because they're already in the business process. So I think we have to watch them at scale, and really, part of how almost all businesses in the world, go to market, manage their business, get their people, all that other stuff. So for me, that's why I went to essential. I mean, I could be argued into important, but what Google does here matters.
Yeah, matters. Okay, Vinay, what were your thoughts on that? Essential, important?
I thought it was important. I think it was, what I kind of reflect on when I see articles like this is that nobody's figured out how to bring AI-enabled search to market, because it feels like, obviously it's an experiment, but it also feels a little haphazard, where let's just create a new text box and people will type in different things there and get different responses. I don't think we know the paradigm yet. And I think what we see here is companies just throwing things against the wall. And that's a typical Google behavior of just trying things out and seeing what happens. But I think it was an interesting read to see how they sort of think about the user paradigm. But it's clear that we haven't settled on the way that this is going to happen in the consumer audience until a few more years.
Okay, thanks, Vinay. Leaning into important, Paul?
Important.
Okay, important it is. Thank you. And Google certainly is in people prefer it to Perplexity still, right? So it's many people, most people are using Google. So John is right. The installed base is humongous. Okay, but let's proceed with the next one, Ankash.
Okay, the next one comes from Epoch AI, and it talks about the promise of reasoning models.
Yeah, I think it's me. Yeah, so this is an interesting, thoughtful article that talks about how the reasoning models, or would the reasoning models impact the business model of LLM big labs like OpenAI, Google, and the like. And it comes to the conclusion that we are seeing the impact on code, on math, where you can verify the results very easily, but it will be way more difficult when it's not easily to quantify and verify. So the end result at the end of the article is to say, yeah, it probably would be evolutional rather than revolutionary. So I put it in I can be argued into important, but I put it into optional. And I'm sure John will argue with me. John, what did you think?
It's all about the tension and the argument, Luda.
Yeah, no, I was optional. I
Oh,
think
right.
no, this guy, there's some people whose expanded prose, walks you along like a Marcel Proust, where you can, watch the drop of water go across the edge of the coffee cup. This guy is not that guy. Okay. Put another way, this is, to me, this is bloatware. He could have made the argument, way more simply, and he should have given it to a robot and just given you the conclusion, because there's
Okay, we've heard John.
not add style nor joy.
Okay. Vinay, it seems like we are optional. What did you think?
Yeah, I agreed. I thought it was kind of a unnecessarily long read about the same thing.
Okay. Optional it is. Paul says visually that he's also optional. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed, Ankash.
Can we have a new category that if you feed this to a robot and have it synopsize it, it's better?
Probably.
We're all doing that anyway.
Ankash?
Okay, moving to the next one. This one comes from AWS, and it talks about how BMW's GenAI solution for cloud incident analysis.
Yes. It's a use case. AWS is doing great job on putting these cases together. This is BMW root cause analysis. Vinay, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought this was interesting. I agree. AWS does a really great job with these use case studies. I think it's important for folks who are interested in how to use Gen AI in software development. And I thought this was an interesting sort of view on, in when you try to debug something, when you try to deal with going through a root cause analysis, that you can have the AI go through that thinking for you. And specifically not just helping an engineer think through it, but actually do the investigation itself. So I thought that was definitely very fascinating. I'd never thought of it in that way. So from that point of view, it's definitely, I thought it was important read for anybody in the software development space.
Yeah, results are 85%. It actually did right, and streamlined the process and gave the root cause analysis correctly. John, where did you land on this one?
Yeah, I was leaning more toward optional, but I could be convinced into important. I mean, it's a nice case study. I was looking for some more financial measures in this thing, but it does a good job of laying it out. BMW is obviously a serious company, and also nice because you have software both in the enterprise and in the product itself. So I'm good for important.
Yeah, I almost think that any good argued case with the explanation and the good technical or framework explanation is a worthwhile thing to read, because you learn from those things quite a bit. So I'm with Vinay. I'm with you, Vinay, to mark it as important. So important it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the last one that we have for today comes from Financial Times, and it talks about how companies are failing to convince staff of AI benefit.
All right, John.
Yeah, I was going to argue important, maybe essential for this. It's not new news here, right? We've reported on the Pew study and so forth, but it's a nice aggregation of different things that are relevant to a business leader around who's adopting this, what the attitudes are, how skewed the market is toward educated and younger people in terms of actual use. People's affect about AI, I think, can be a major issue to manage. I was just at a $36 billion health insurer yesterday talking to the folks, and the fear in the audience is palpable. I mean, people, and this is a leading company in terms of using AI effectively and engaging people and so forth. But there's a lot of fear out there, and I think executives need to understand that and think about what they're going to do about it. I mean, you may have you might have a devil may care attitude, like I would say someone like Elon Musk has, or could be on the other end of the spectrum. But it's something you need to be aware of and decide how you're going to manage consciously and this is the best short agglomeration of data, attitudes, and adoption I've seen. So I'm on the fence between important and essential.
Vinay, where did you land on this one?
Yeah, I thought it was important as well. I felt that any insights into how people are adopting AI within the corporate enterprise is a good thing, because I do think that a lot of that is pretty opaque right now, given the proliferation of consumer apps. We're finding that in our company. Even though we tell people to use a certain thing, they still come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm using this for this or that for that." I'm like, "Okay, that's great, but let's talk about it." And so I think anything that helps us really understand the nature of work. I thought there was a great comment on there about the fact that folks felt dissatisfied in using AI because it minimized some of their own creativity. And I think that's something that we all need to be very aware of, right? That there's very fundamental changes to how people feel satisfaction in the workplace as a result of using AI. We may get all the productivity gains, but we may not get the wellness gains that we want to get.
Right. It's we reviewed an article about shadow AI, and when people, like you said, that they bring their own tools and they use them despite the fact that you tell them as a management team not to, they will still use that because this helps them with their work and it helps them with their productivity. So it's better, obviously, to engage with the employees and give them the tools that they want. But it seems like this is really lagging. And so from that perspective, I also was on important essential, but I'm thinking maybe essential so that people are aware. The ones who are enabling their workforce should pat themselves on the back and say, well, this is good. I might be getting differentiation from that and push it even more. So it's good for the folks who are not yet there and the folks who are there.
Yeah, the other thing, just to make sure our audience understands, Vinay is, probably one of the best people in the world to opine on this. I mean, he's a deep technologist. He's a senior executive at a big company, One Digital, that's actually implementing, digital workers. So he is, he is most informed on this topic in particular. And if you think it's valuable to you, Vinay, then I think it's, something we really need to take a look at. Vinay, if we have time at the end, I would love you to just share with us a little bit about what you're learning, in that role, because, you're one of only, 2 or 3 people I know who's actually at the coalface doing this aggressively in a business that's going to be transformed.
Sure. Yeah, happy to share more.
Vinay, would you support essential? Is it that important to you to have that type of data?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, any insights into how people are using the workplace is very important.
All right, let's put essential on that. And this is our last article. So Ankaj, as you prepare the tally board, maybe Vinay, this is a good opportunity to share whatever you feel like would be useful to our audience here.
Yeah, as John was saying, so One Digital is a financial services and human capital organization. So we work with about 100,000 employers and about 15 million families around the country on everything from their employee benefits to retirement to wealth management, property and casualty. So a wide variety of products and services. Company's about over $1 billion in revenue, about 5,000 people. We leaned in hard on AI, about 2 years ago, and fast forward to where we are today. We've deployed what we call AI coworkers across the organization. These are, as you would imagine, advanced chatbots that we've actually co-developed an agentic platform that we host within our own cloud infrastructure that allows us to train these coworkers to give them specific knowledge sets and instructions. They're tied into our systems, whether it be SharePoint or our CRM systems. And people use these coworkers every day in their work. Okay, I'll give you an example. We have a coworker called Ben, the benefits expert. Ben is responsible for knowing everything that there is about health insurance and healthcare costs. So as a consultant, you can come to Ben and give it a scenario. Perhaps you have a census from your employer. Perhaps you have their current benefit strategy. And it'll brainstorm with you on ways to reduce healthcare costs, whether it means moving to a self-insured model or all these different strategies that we have. We have some internally facing ones. We have Warren, the leadership ally. So it's there as a leadership coach to help any of our managers and leaders discover ways to lean into their strengths as a leader and use the yes and framework to help guide their team, and a variety of others. So we actually think of it as an AI staffing capability. So my team is essentially working very closely with our HR team. And when managers in the organization would like to deploy AI, we hire them. We actually write a job description for the AI, just as if we were to post it on Indeed. And instead, what we do is feed that job description into a large language model that then becomes an intern. And we try the intern out. We fire a lot of interns because sometimes it doesn't work out. But once we know that it's performing better, then we graduate it into an apprenticeship, which means that the AI then has exposure to human teams. And then finally, when we're ready and it's gone through some more extensive training, we graduate it to a full-time availability. So we have about half a dozen full-time available coworkers today. We'll have about a dozen more over the next few weeks as we roll out this functionality. And it's available to everybody in the company. And we did some beta communities over the last few months near the end of last year. And we just saw an explosion of usage, like hundreds of people in the company using this every single day to do their job, and primarily client-facing roles. So consultants, salespeople, client executives, folks like that are strapped for time all the time and need tools to help them find more bandwidth in their day, which is exactly what we're seeing with this. So it's fascinating. And one of the things that we sort of think a lot about is, and I was talking about this earlier, the workforce implications of widespread adoption of AI coworkers, because part of the challenge is that it does change the nature of work. It changes the purpose of work. It also changes, excuse me, how people get promoted at work, how your culture changes. We have already had scenarios where somebody's AI is better than another one, but they get promoted. Is that okay? These are difficult HR problems for us to dig into. So as I said at the onset, we're a human capital company. So we care about people. We care about HR functions within employers. And so we're trying to educate a lot of our clients on what this means and how it's happening in their company.
You're getting a lot of questions here. Like, for example, how many AI interns do each employee typically use?
Mm-hmm.
How are you tracking impact?
Yeah. So those are great questions. So every coworker actually has a set of KPIs assigned to them. Think of them as what we're tracking to be successful. Some of them are aligned around usage. So if we just see a lot of usage, we can extrapolate from their impact. Other cases, we're looking at specific workflows. So we have Artie, the RFP expert. So Artie's job is to respond to RFPs. And we know we have thousands of RFPs every year from prospects and clients. And so we know how long it takes to respond to them. And we know that with Artie's help, we can reduce that by 10-fold, 20, in some cases 100-fold. Like, it just becomes a lot easier to respond to RFPs. So we have in some cases very specific metrics. In terms of the number of interns, so again, there's about half a dozen ones right now. So we see pretty widespread usage of those amongst the beta community. We literally just this last Monday launched it across the entire company. So I'm watching the stats right now. We're starting to see the usage go up. And so we'll start to see and learn more about how people are using this every day. I agree a lot from the Financial Times article that training matters. So something that we work on a lot is something called icebreakers. So every coworker, you can go to our intranet, see basically a bench of them, and you can select a coworker that you want to talk to, but you also have icebreakers. And so these icebreakers are sort of ways to start the conversation with your AI coworker, and they're designed around specific use cases where you can just sort of copy and paste the name of the client or something specific in there, but we're giving you the prompt starters that allow you to get going. So we're finding things like that, more champion-based training. So having folks in offices who are champions for these talk about how they're using it, and that helps to drive usage. One thing to also note is that every coworker actually has a manager. So they actually have a supervisor that is a human being that is responsible for managing that coworker. So we're learning a lot about how people think about scaling their own subject matter expertise, because we have this one lady who's an amazing salesperson, amazing consultant, we're taking everything in her head and putting it into one of the coworkers and training it, and she's the coworker's manager. And so she's learning about how to scale her impact and effectiveness across hundreds of people, which is, I think, just a fascinating kind of thing.
Fascinating. You seem to be very, very advanced in your application of AI. Absolutely stunning. Thank you for sharing this. This is really cool. Ankash, do we have a board?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for those who are interested, I wrote a short Forbes article on some of the work that Vinay is doing as well.
Oh, that would be good, John, to share. Okay, great. Vinay, thanks very much. We have 2 essentials, 2 important, and 2 optional. The essentials are the top 100 Gen AI consumer apps, and the discussion about from the Financial Times article about the AI benefits. Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. And we'll see you. Thank you, Vinay, for joining and sharing. And we'll see you all tomorrow.